country where you cannot criticize your government. And men are prohibited from growing out their hair. A country where a government tells you when to cry. And when to laugh. A country where making international calls is prohibited. And your entire family could be punished if you commit a crime. A country where listening to foreign music, or wearing jeans, or reading religious texts may lead to one's execution. Trapped in bizarre rules and laws, isolated from the world. This is North Korea, a dystopian land. The Korean Demilitarized Zone is popularly known as DMZ. It is a border barrier that divides the Korean peninsula roughly in half into North and South Korea. An area that no one dares to cross. The DMZ is a 2-kilometer wide buffer stretching coast to coast across the peninsula. Lined on both sides with razor wire, heavy armaments and tank traps. To see why this zone was created, we have to revisit the 1940s. In 1910, Korea was annexed by the Empire of Japan. Japan ruled the peninsula for 35 years, till its surrender at the end of World War II. In the late 1940s, geopolitical tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union had started simmering. As the Cold War began between these two giants, the Korean peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel. A popular name given to the latitude line that roughly demarcates North and South Korea. The North received Soviet backing, while the United States supported the South. In 1948, the two sides became officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north and the Republic of Korea in the south. On June 25, 1950, the Korean War broke out when the North's army invaded the south. Capturing Seoul within days, North Korean forces advanced to the tip of the peninsula. A UN coalition led by American troops stepped in to force the North Koreans back, pushing them as far as the Sino-Korean border. Chinese forces crossed into the north to help launch a counter-offensive. The UN forces retaliated, and eventually, in May 1951, the border between the two countries was fixed around the 38th parallel. In July 1953, North Korea signed a ceasefire agreement with the United States, marking the end of the fighting. An estimated 2 to 4 million people died or disappeared during the conflict. Surprisingly, no formal peace treaty has since been signed, leaving North and South Korea still technically at war, even after 70 years. Perhaps the biggest blow to North Korea came after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. North Korea was heavily dependent on Russia for economic aid. But after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, North Korea was left with only China as its major ally. Around this time, the former supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il, started conducting most day-to-day activities of running the state. He had become the heir apparent for the leadership of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. His father, Kim Il-sung, was the first supreme leader of the country. Kim Il-sung had set up the propaganda "Down with Imperialism Union" to fight against Japanese imperialism and to promote Marxism-Leninism. After his death in 1994, Kim Jong-il was chosen as the second supreme leader from 1994 to 2011. Kim Jong-il continued his dictatorship until his death in 2011, when he was succeeded by his son, Kim Jong-un, who is now the current supreme leader of North Korea. Three generations of one family have been dictating North Korea for more than 70 years, advocating complete communism and cutting all ties with the rest of the world. It is interesting to note that Korea was known as the Hermit Kingdom way back in the 18th century. During that period, all three, China, Japan and Korea, opted for strict isolation from the outside world, while China and Japan decided to have one small port each for foreign trade. Korea decided to forego even that tiny opening. Now, 3 centuries later, the term Hermit Kingdom is still used for North Korea. In fact, in 2009, it was used by Hillary Clinton, who was then the United States Secretary of State. On her way to Seoul, she told reporters, and we quote, "I don't think it is taboo to talk about the succession of the Hermit Kingdom." In recent years, the international community has been alarmed by North Korea's quest for nuclear weapons. The North Korean regime has been conducting nuclear tests since 2006. The country is suspected of already possessing sufficient fissile material for the manufacture of more than a dozen atomic weapons. Despite UN sanctions and the diplomatic efforts made by Washington through China, North Korea appears to be undeterred. Since the Korean War, the United States has maintained a strong military presence in South Korea, with 28,500 troops, 90 Patriot missiles, and 5 military bases. To keep a check on Kim Jong-un's activities, the United States has invested in different defense systems, and this has made the United States North Korea's biggest enemy.
I have made the worst mistake of my life, but please, act to save me. Please, think of my family.
This is Otto Frederick Warmbier, an American college student who was imprisoned in North Korea in 2016 on a charge of subversion.
After I planned in detail to accomplish my plan, I arrived in Pyongyang on December 29th, 2015, through Beijing. On the early morning of January 1st, 2016, I committed my crime of taking out the important political slogan from the staff-only area of the Yangakdo International Hotel, aimed at harming the work ethic and the motivation of the Korean people. After committing my crime against the people and government of the DPR Korea, I was detained on January 2nd, 2016, at the Pyongyang International Airport.
This may appear to be a confession, but experts say he was pressured into making the statement. Warmbier entered North Korea as a part of a guided tour group on December 29, 2015. But on January 2nd, 2016, he was arrested at Pyongyang International Airport while awaiting departure from the country. He was convicted of attempting to steal a propaganda poster from his hotel, for which he was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment with hard labor. Under North Korea's custody, Warmbier suffered a severe neurological injury from an unconfirmed cause and fell into a coma, which lasted over a year. After 17 months in captivity, he was released by North Korea in a vegetative state and repatriated to the United States in June 2017. But he died soon afterwards. In a statement earlier this year, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un can be seen calling the United States his biggest enemy and threatening to vastly expand his nuclear arsenal. The statement comes 3 years after the 2019 Korea's United States DMZ summit, which marked the first and only time a sitting US president set foot on North Korean soil. Donald Trump met Kim Jong-un at the DMZ, and both stepped over the border. It was the second time since the end of the Korean War in 1953 that a North Korean leader entered the South's territory, following the April 2018 Inter-Korean Summit. Even after the so-called historic step, no real progress was made on denuclearization.
우리 원수님께서 계시면 우리 조기의 앞날은 언제나 밝고 창창한가. 저는 조선노동당원의 한 성원으로서 국내는 체벌과 동지의 사상과 내용들을 충성으로 받들어 나가겠다는 것을 국제 결합니다.
우리의 분계 연선까지 기어나와 감히 최고 저름을 얻어가면서 사랑하는 우리의 적국 조선민주주의 및 공화국을 못하겠다는 이 사실은 치솟는 분노를 금할 수 없게 만듭니다.
미국이 하는 악성비를 받으면서 자라난 이 인간 쓰레기, 인간 잡초들을 모조리 쓸어버리고 싶다는 것을 오늘 이 자리를 통하여.
These are the citizens of North Korea. Do their statements sound effortless to you? Are they speaking willingly or under pressure? We'll let you decide. They are certainly being shown a delusional world by their leader, or should we say, master? Many North Koreans have chosen to flee the brutal dictatorship. They are called defectors. In October 2021, a bunch of North Korean defectors in Tokyo symbolically summoned Kim Jong-un to court over a repatriation program, which they described as state kidnapping. The unusual case is a bid to hold Pyongyang responsible for a scheme that saw more than 90,000 people move to North Korea from Japan between 1959 and 1984. The program mainly targeted ethnic Koreans, but also their Japanese spouses, lured by fantastical propaganda promising a paradise on Earth. Five participants in the repatriation scheme who later escaped from North Korea are demanding $88,000 each in damages as they make their case in the Tokyo District Court. They have accused Pyongyang of deceiving plaintiffs by false advertising to relocate to North Korea, where the enjoyment of human rights was generally impossible.
I traveled to North Korea. I was shocked and saddened. I spent 42 years there in fear that I might be killed at any time. It's been 18 years since I defected from the North without telling anyone in the family. After borders were closed during the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korean people are completely detained, like in a cage. I cannot even see if my family there is still alive or not.
This is the shocking reality. No one knows what's happening behind the Iron Curtain. Perhaps barring one country, China. For years, North Korea has relied on China to stay afloat amid UN sanctions over its nuclear and missile programs. It depends on Beijing for things like oil, fertilizer, and mechanical parts. China accounts for more than 90% of its trade. China and North Korea have a mutual aid and cooperation treaty. The only defense treaty either country has with any nation. Beijing maintains an embassy in the North Korean capital of Pyongyang and a consulate general in Chongjin. North Korea shut its borders in January 2020. One of the first countries to do so after cases of COVID-19 infection were reported in neighboring China. The Hermit Kingdom claims it did not witness a single case of coronavirus. Finally, on November 1st, the two countries resumed cross-border rail freight traffic. And reports suggest that the Chinese city of Dandong is building more facilities at its border crossing with North Korea. What has prompted this? Kim has been struggling to overcome what appears to be his toughest period as a leader. North Korea is struggling to feed itself. Kim Jong-un declared a food shortage in June 2021. The country's self-imposed lockdown during the COVID-19 crisis unleashed further damage on an economy battered by sanctions and decades of mismanagement. A succession of typhoons and heavy rains also hampered food production. So, how is the government planning to solve this crisis? By consuming more of black swan meat. Yes, you heard that right. North Korea's state-run television reported the completion of a black swan breeding center. The black swan is a large water bird, and North Korea has been touting the health benefits of consuming its meat. The severe food shortages has forced officials to come up with solutions, which also include farming rabbits and raising catfish in rice paddies. In another desperate move, Kim issued a statement asking his people to eat less till 2025. North Korea has always struggled with food shortages. In fact, the current supreme leader has compared the present situation to the country's worst disaster in the 1990s, known as the Arduous March, where hundreds of thousands of people died in a famine. Meanwhile, Kim is focusing on his efforts to build a model city. He made his first public appearance after more than a month with a visit to the northwestern city of Samjeon, near the border with China, to inspect a major development project. Kim has high hopes for the city, which he has been redeveloping as a model city since 2018. But there's nothing exemplary about the rogue nation and how it is administered. Kim Jong-un has spent years consolidating his power by ruthlessly removing rivals. Let's look at the reasons why it is considered to be among the most dangerous countries in the world. North Korea is one of the few nations that continue to conduct public executions, and defectors have revealed that the vast majority of these executions happen by firing squad. In a book interview, Donald Trump said that Kim Jong-un told him that he had ordered the execution of his uncle and displayed the headless body to senior North Korean officials. In 2015, North Korean Defense Minister Hyun Yong-chol was executed with an anti-aircraft gun in front of over 100 people for having fallen asleep during one of Kim Jong-un's events. In South Korea's hit series Squid Game, one wrong step by a player can lead to his or her death. In North Korea, this happens in real life. A South Korean NGO says it has identified 318 sites in North Korea that have been used by the government to carry out public executions. Many of these executions are carried out for offenses as minor as watching foreign movies or possessing a Bible. This is North Korea's Squid Game. The success of the web series highlighted the problem of wealth inequality. With the economy mainly geared towards supporting a large military, poverty is a way of life for most North Koreans, and yet corruption is endemic. In North Korea, the rules of the game have been laid out. Citizens are monitored at every step. It is Kim Jong-un's playing field. Those who quit or voice dissent face dire consequences. And in this story, there is no happy ending.